Okay. Great. Got the magic button working. Hello, everyone. Today is July 12th, 2021. This is a meeting of the SIG Network Policy API subgroup of SIG Network. This is a CNCF certified meeting. So please be kind to one another and let's have a good meeting today. So the agenda is pretty empty for this week. Went over the issues, didn't see any new issues to triage. Did anyone have any issues they wanted to talk about? Cool. I didn't see any pertaining to network policy that I thought were not addressed or particularly important. So nothing really new there. Abhishek, did you want to talk about API group name suggestions? I know this has come up a couple times now, but it sounds like we need to decide on a name.
Yeah, I thought since there was not much on the agenda, I thought something that pertains to the whole group. And most recently, I saw that the Ingress folks have agreed upon the gateway.networking.ks.io name. So seems like it might be it's natural for us to follow that lead and have like some subgroup name .networking.ks.io. So I put in a couple of suggestions there, but feel free to add more, and if there's something that sticks to the group of us and others, maybe we can propose that. So just wanted others to also think about it once and see if they have more suggestions to the names. I mean, it's going to be pretty hard to convince everyone on the same name. I'm not stuck up on any of the names that I've suggested. These are just something that came on top of my head, and I think they're pretty generic.
Yeah, I didn't know the Ingress folks had decided on a name, but it makes sense. I personally don't have too much of a preference either. Netpol.networking.k8s.io would line up with the new network policy tests that have been written.
Yeah, the only downside of that suggestion is that it's very closely related to NetPol and net policy. And I remember seeing one comment from Tim Hawkin on the original issue where they are discussing how to group these API groups and like how to vet or form like a separate repository for these API groups and subgroups. I think in there he mentioned something like we should avoid having the resource name as a subgroup. So I don't know if that falls, like if NetPol falls as a resource name, and that's why they didn't do the Ingress dot networking. They chose gateway, something which is a little generic. So that's the only thing that I feel like maybe maybe something that will be pushed back on NetPol, but it still doesn't really align one-to-one with network policy resources. Just a short name for it, but
yeah, Abhishek, are you sharing something or you just read it out?
No, I think I put the items in the agenda doc. So
okay, can someone share that so that we can just look at it? Yeah, I think that makes sense. So we can have access control.networking.k8s.io or policy, because we already got policy. So there's this gateway.networking.
I hadn't looked in a while, but that's what Abhishek said. So I think so. It's what is it? Gateway.networking.io.
K8s.io.
That's correct. Networking.k8s.io. Yeah.
Oh, yep.
In fact, that's what we had also commented on. So, I mean, logically, if we didn't already have policy, then policy.networking would have made sense. But since we already have a resource called network policy.
Wait, what is named after policy for now? because
network policy dot networking dot. I mean, it's not the API group; it's the resource. Network policy resource under networking.kits.io.
right. So I'm actually trying to understand, why you think policy would overlap with something else here.
It wouldn't
Is-
exactly overlap. It's just semantically similar because you're basically saying you have conventional network policy. You go to the resource called network policy under networking.kits.io.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But to have this cluster network policy, you go to a resource called cluster network policy under policy.networking.kits.io. And then later on, when you have a networking policy v2, that'll have yet another name, which will not be, and the policy word is repeated. It's not strictly a conflict. It just seems like the gateway is completely different from Ingress. It's a completely different word. They didn't sort of have a variation calling it like Ingress gateway or whatever, right? The gateway is completely separate, nothing to do
Yeah, I
with it.
understand. So what you're basically saying is that we wanted to come with a even more high level name for cluster network policy, current network policy, and network policy v2, and sort of like scope all things in this, like access. But
I'm just
I don't particularly like access.
No, I'm just
yeah.
just throwing stuff.
Yeah,
down.
I know. I completely understand what you're trying to suggest here.
I mean, it can be a short one like acl.networking.io. I mean, ACL is also an acronym. So again, it's not explicit.
Yeah, at one point I also thought about security. I think that's a very broad term, and it just
Yeah.
goes beyond security, and not just, it goes beyond networking also. But since it's part of the networking subgroup, I mean, you can think of it as a security for networking, not for like generic workload security.
Segmentation / filter, because we are not talking about all aspects of networking like certificate management or whatever. We are talking about basically segmentation and access control.
Mm-hmm. Naming's the hardest part. Ugh. I would lean towards, policy.networking.kits.io is simple, but Sanjeev has a good point in the sense that like every resource is going to have the word policy in it.
I mean, that should still be one of our choices, and we can see what the SIG network guys have to say with it because they have an opinion on it.
Yeah, totally. And just for people who haven't been or didn't go to the upstream meeting, I actually missed it, but I got filled in on what happened. We are asking some of the head upstream guys to come to next Monday's meeting so we can hash out some stuff with CMP and more about the stuff. That's why Abhishek's already added stuff for next week. So just
I
for
wanted
everyone's
to
knowledge.
Yeah, I wanted to give sort of an update for that. So I reached out to Tim Hawken and Casey, and Tim mentioned that he's out of office the whole of next week. I think he's on a family vacation. So, I asked him if we can do sometime later in this week or sometime after the week after. But he did mention saying that Friday in the morning works for him. So I was thinking maybe we should do that sooner rather than later. So if we can see whether like Dan and Casey can also make it this Friday morning, and then maybe we can at least have a quorum and try to do it before Tim takes off for his video.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. That makes sense. As long as we record it, then anyone who can't make it can watch it. I think that'd be good.
I just heard from Casey, and I think he mentioned that he's on a vacation until the 21st. So,
okay.
So he's going to be out for a while. So
the summer's hard. The summer's hard.
It's going to be hard to figure a good time for everyone. But if at least, maybe Dan Williams can make it, maybe we have enough quorum to discuss a bit, at least move forward. because if you want to wait till the end of the month, then it will be it will be like stalemate for for a while. So
Did you contact Thomas Graf?
Thomas, I can talk to him as well. Yes. The only problem is that Friday morning is going to be his Friday evening, and it's going to be hard for him to join. I know he does join at times, but I can ask him if he or some other representative from Cilium community can join. But yes,
Did
I
you
will try to reach out.
offer just going to the CMP meeting on Thursday and could
I think Tim's calendar was not that open this Thursday. I think he mentioned Friday anytime in the AM is good, or the following Monday after his video, which would be 26th. And I think that also brings Casey on board because I think he's back. So we can have 26th as an option, or if the Dan Winchuk and Dan William can make it this Friday, then maybe we can do it earlier.
Okay. Dan Winship was just getting back, so I'll reach out to him after this meeting, or both of them after this meeting. I just hadn't pinged them yet. But Friday is usually easier as long as neither of them are on PTO, so it should work.
Cool. And I'll also reach out to Thomas.
Okie doke. Yeah, and for anyone who can't make it, like, I will try to record that meeting because I know it should be kind of, informative. And then we can go over kind of, if we get to meet, we can go over what happened on that Monday meeting as well.
Yeah. And I should also ask, like, is this group also okay with the Friday morning meeting?
What time on Friday?
I was thinking maybe 10 a.m., 10:30 a.m., 11 a.m. Pacific. So sometime in between of that, and take an hour.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's fine, Abhishek. Are you going to share it here, the meeting details?
I will definitely send out an email and to the networking mailer, and also on the SIG network and SIG network policy Slack channel. But let's get confirmation first from the others, and then maybe we can. If not, then maybe we are looking at like July 26th. This meeting.
Got it.
Yep, I agree. Awesome. I think that's a clear next step. So should be good.
Yang, do you have any conflicts? I know we have our team meeting in the
No.
evening, but I think we can try to skip that.
Yeah, again, I mean, thanks Abhishek for trying to organize this. I know it's when you're aware, I had a really hard time, having all those people together in meetings. So it's
and it's harder because I can't see their calendars.
Yeah.
So
Cross company collaboration.
Yeah.
Well,
Thanks
for Red
everyone's
Hat at
cooperation.
least, we have meeting free Fridays in some parts of our company.
Okay. All right. So hopefully Dan can make it.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Awesome. Well, we'll keep everyone updated on that, like Abhishek said. And if you need help, Abhishek, with anything, just ping me. I can help plan it or send out invites or whatever you need. So.
Yeah, I'll reach out to Thomas, but most likely you'll only see it tomorrow. So I'll let you guys know.
Yeah, I'll reach out to them after this meeting. Cool. Okay. Well, we'll talk more about the API group naming suggestions next week then, after some talk with some of those guys, and then give everyone a second to, think about what they like the best, upvote, downvote, and we should decide kind of soon, I think. So
should we put a vote on this on the network policy API repo? Like open the issue or whatnot?
I think, let's get the main thing. Let's get agreement on the CAPE, because the naming, sometimes I've seen that these become tangential discussions and you end up not discussing the main issue. So at this point, really the main issue is getting some version of the CAPE approved. Once the CAPE is approved, agreeing on the name should be, but if we start debate on the name, that becomes a tangential discussion and we don't end up having time for the core discussion of what features the CAPE should have.
Fair enough.
I think,
yeah.
But I think the naming is not just for the CNP, but it's like a generic thing for the whole. It's a side issue, but it's I mean, I guess we can work parallelly on it. It should not be coupled with the CNPCAP.
Correct. Yep.
yeah.
It's for V2 as well and any other
Yeah.
object. Okay, cool. Well, just keep thinking about it. Feel free to add to the list. If you want to open an issue, Yang, I'll feel free. That's fine too. Whatever works the best. So we have that repo there for anyway. So works for me. Cool. So V2 working doc, I've been calling this out the past couple of meetings. I gave it a round review today. Prasad and Nadeem, do you want to, we have a lot of time left. We can kind of run through this a little bit if you want, or what would you like
Yeah,
to do?
so yeah, let's do that, Andrew. I mean, maybe let's go through some of the comments, and maybe then we can work offline if we are not able to address now.
Yeah, for sure. So do you want to just give a high level of like what you two created this motivations doc for? What was the main purpose?
Yeah, so initially we started creating the use cases, along with Abhishek and Yang. Then one of the discussion came out is first let's capture what are the things we wanted to go after as part of V2, so that it becomes, if somebody takes a look, hopefully they get the picture what is that we are after for V2. So that's the motivation. So, but I'm sure we haven't fully captured what we want. Maybe that's where if you guys can start helping, we can shape this document. So that's the that's the main intent. So here basically what are the things we wanted to go after, and we try to list for example egress policy definition limitations. So, and we try to capture that, like and I do see comments from you and Sanjeev. So here should I just quickly walk through and each each headline, so that maybe we agree, maybe we don't agree, but at least we have some conversation going. So the first one is overview, will expand that. Then the next one is what are the limitations we have in the ingress and egress policy definitions. So one is natural way of writing the policy. When we are when we try to write a policy, we typically say communicate between A to B, or what that kind of natural thing. So that's where we are trying to capture that as one of the point to go after multiple endpoints. So so that is where we are trying to give some more details in here. And
so quick question though, like how do you want this document to flow like this is what we want to get out of V2, or should it flow like this is the problems with V1, and because of those problems this is what we want to get out of V2? Like, is it totally just like a clean break, we aren't even going to refer to V1, or is it like you want to
yeah, actually I would prefer the totally breakout way, but I think Sanjeev and others said, hey, what are the problems with V1? Why are we doing this? So actually, that's a good question. Even I was contemplating, how do we write hey, we have a clean breakout. Hey, this is what we wanted to do. So actually, I'm not sure. I would take everybody's suggestion, and I can morph into the way everybody agrees. But right now here, at least we try to do maybe I don't know whether we are trying to thread on both boats, but one way we are trying to tell, hey, this we can't achieve through V1. It's not a natural flow. But we didn't say how we are going to do, but at least we just said, hey, it is not natural enough. Then that might indicate that what V2 wants to do.
Mhm.
So in my personal view, right, something that's not a natural way, that I would perhaps consider it as a secondary reason, right? Primary reason is a functionality that is really important but cannot be done with V1. That would be a primary reason. Something that is not natural but still can be done with V1 is a secondary reason, because then that is like, yeah, you can do it with V1, it's just not as clean. So I think we should have primary reason 1, 2, secondary reason 1, 2, or
Got it.
yeah.
So I mean, so in here, right? If you go to the next subheading, Andrew. So halfway communication. That's another one. And also in the top one, like you won't be able to specify one policy. You have to specify a number of policies. So that's where I don't know, we clubbed it that into the natural way of specifying the policy. So maybe we can break that into multiple pieces and say that you have to write multiple policies for the same use case or for same communication paths to define. Then we can next sub bullet we can say, hey, this is not a natural way.
So yeah, that's so my comment on that was that a counter argument could be that the multiple policies has a benefit that only the developer responsible for a service, if I'm responsible for service A, I do not need to figure out a policy for service B. It keeps every service developer responsible for the policies of their service. But if you write an end-to-end policy, then I'm writing a policy which affects both my service and your service. So it includes, it adds a bit of friction between the developers, because you're writing service A, I'm writing service B, but I'm also writing a policy that combines service A and B. So
yeah, I think that's a good argument, but I mean, at least one camp I see is like, when we write policies, they have to be, you take a namespace, right? In the admin boundary, the policy has to be clean. Let's say you give, authority for a service to create his own policy, and the other service might, do differently. You don't have a cohesive thing, right? So that's where having a bigger picture view is generally a good idea for security, right? You don't want to be siloed thing. So I'm not saying like,
maybe the answer would be that that means both models need to be supported, because in some cases it's better that each developer only cares about the policies to their service, and so developer for service A cares about policies that attach to pods of service A, developer of service B cares about policies that attach to pods of service B, and they don't need to coordinate with each other, because each knows what is the best thing that service A should be protected from. And in some cases where there needs to be somebody writing policy both that combines service A and B, that's an optional thing, but that should not be the only way of writing a policy.
Yeah, so Sanjeev, so my input on that is, see, there is in Kubernetes at least, right, we don't have a concept of service. I mean, we have a Kubernetes service, but here I think we are talking more in terms of applications, right? So that construct doesn't exist. So the only construct where we have the admin boundary is a namespace. So within a namespace, even if I'm a developer, I write like, let's say I deploy my one application in one namespace, right? I write my web tier can talk to my, let's say, database, sorry, my app or my backend tier, right? And then I say on the backend side, my backend tier can talk to the app tier, right? So if we keep the namespace boundary, right, in a way, we actually control both sides of it, but still we have to replicate it in two places.
But are you assuming that different services will reside in different namespaces? Because the tenancy model and others that we've talked about is that multiple services reside in the same namespace.
Yes. So if see, what I'm trying to say is, if they're in the same namespace, and namespace is the only construct other than the pod, right? Which makes which is applicable here. Then defining ones which takes care of both sides within the same namespace is more practical. If services are deployed across namespaces, then even unless you go to CNP, right? Even if you define the policy, you are still controlling only the part of your namespace. So unless the other namespace says, okay, I
Even
also
so,
have
right?
to.
Even so, I as a developer of Service A, the fact that both Service A and Service B are in the same namespace doesn't change the fact that I know Service A best and you know Service B best, and we should both be respectively writing the policies for Service A and B so that you can decide later on, hey, Service B was allowing port 75. Now it decides it's no longer allowing port 75. And you do not need to coordinate with me because I'm writing a different service. My point is that it fits into this philosophy behind this whitelist model where uh, policies are selected by certain pods and the writer of that pod knows what that pod should accept and not accept. So maybe I'm being a little bit of a devil's advocate, but my point is that there is valid reason for the current design.
No,
Yes.
I mean, it's absolutely correct, Sanjeev. There is a valid reason, but it is going to bring up the limitations, right? So that is what we are trying to highlight. See, you have a viewpoint from service one, let's say, web service, then app service. Then everybody is working in their silos. As a, security admin, as a, higher admin, I need to have a cohesive story, right?
Yeah, so that's where admin policies are different. We are still talking about developer policies here, right? And all I'm saying is that this is the this is the logic that you'll probably hear from the others also. So I'm just sort of
no. I think it's
we should have a good argument in favor
yes,
of it,
yes,
right?
yes. I'm with you. I mean,
yeah.
We should be able to. I mean, at least we should be able to convince you as you are playing devil's advocate. I agree with you.
Yeah.
So
or just SIG Networks advocate.
Yeah. True. So basically, I think I mean, at least if I see when I work with my customers, what I see is like they want to have a cohesive story, right? So there would be one admin who is controlling an application. They wanted to write a policy for that. They typically don't give a chance to a particular person to write things, but they would, in a given application, you can have multiple policies. That's how I have seen, where policy one belongs to web and policy two could belong to app, and policy three could be belong to DB. In a given application, like now you have a cohesive story. This application will consist of P1, P2, and P3. Now, by looking into it, like you can tell what is the flow allowed or not. But the way
That's
we
fine.
have
I don't
here
want to
is,
beat the dead horse. No, it's not a dead horse. I mean, I don't want to rat hole on this. The point is we should have a good explanation for justifying it. And maybe the answer would be that we need both sorts of models because different developing models could be different, right? And I wouldn't use the word silo. The whole point about microservices is each microservice can proceed independently of the other. So microservices are sold on the concept that each service can be developed by the team responsible for that service without having to interact too much with the other teams. So there is value for some people to say, I should care about my network policies, you care about your network policies. And this is how microservice model is. So anyway, just be prepared for that justification.
Yeah, I think I mean, anyway, the both sets of the arguments. If you can help us in articulate, we would take that input, Sanjeev, for sure.
Yeah, my current thinking is that we might, if we want to justify, we can't say that the current model can't be supported. It'll have to be in addition to the current model. You have to support the case where each policy is applied to the service without the end-to-end view, and then optionally have the end-to-end view.
Okay, so are you saying we have to maintain the existing ingress egress in addition to what we are going to propose? I mean,
I think we have to be prepared for that, because if we're going to say that we're going to get rid of the current model completely, we're going to only have the end-to-end model, we'll need more justification. So just prepare the justification if you feel like we only want to have the end-to-end model. But I think my current gut feel is that there is value in the current model as well. So you can't throw away the current model.
I mean,
As
what
far
do
as-
what do you mean end-to-end model though? Like, doesn't that start going into the CMP scope if you're trying to totally block off two endpoints in different namespaces? I get the end-to-end model may be isolated to a single namespace.
Yeah, they're using end-to-end in terms of end-to-end within an application.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Not a
Yeah,
replacement.
because and as an application owner, I wanted to see what is who is communicating to who and how. But once you start having ingress and egress, it would work. But it's just that you have to have too many policies, and we have seen so many tools, putting the AML file configuration and see how the flow happens. So, I mean, it's okay if you have 10 policies, we can comprehend it. Once you start going like, a realistic scenario, I have seen 50 policies or even so.
Yeah.
Which is like, pretty tough to comprehend what's really happening.
The
So,
key
but
point
when
here
you-
is that if you are going to propose that we completely get rid of the current model in which policies are attached based on services it's a drastic change. It'll be a more challenging sell because you are quite diverging from NetPol v1. So you'll have stronger arguments you'll need.
Nice.
Is my personal view. I could be wrong.
No,
No,
I think this is correct, but at the same time, there is a concern that the whole concept of end-to-end policy, right, has an impact on the policy selector, the pod selector itself, right? Because we will be selecting the pod selector on a very different boundaries, right? Maybe we'll say where app equal to one particular app. So combining both models and still honoring the pod selector, I have to go back and see if we are creating more complex scenarios than solving the complexity in the existing model.
That's true. You mean to say having both simultaneously, right, Nadeem?
Yeah, having both simultaneously in the single model, because see, the problem is we are going to have, let's say this, we go ahead with this implementation of V2 as proposed, right? The way the pod selectors are going to be written is going to be very different from the pod selectors how they are written today, right? We will be writing on a application boundary pod selectors, right? I mean, if we want for one particular application, we can define everything in a single pod selector, right? I'll say app equal to my finance app, and I can write all the policies, all the rules between all the microservices of that application in one policy, assuming that they are all in the same namespace, right? So now if you want to do ingress egress actually goes and applies to the microservice level, right? Ingress egress of web will be very different from ingress egress of my backend in the same finance app application, right? So the policies, I mean, we can support both models, but both models, if we support, then still it will be probably there will be more instances of policy because the pod selectors are going to be very different in both models.
Yeah, so maybe that also has a challenge. So, but my point is that this is a performance improvement over the current. I mean, yeah, one can argue there's an ease of use or whatever, but it's not giving you new functionality which you cannot do with NetPol v1. So it will require strong justification that you are not giving me new functionality, but you are changing the policy configuration model. So it needs more justification because you're making a drastic change. It better give me significant enough return.
But don't you think, writing, 50 policies to versus one or two policies to understand things is enough justification? Because this is
I'm not convinced. Maybe I'm not aware that the difference is that drastic, 50 versus 2, because eventually even if the policy is attached to each service, he needs to just do the minimum number that his service accepts, right? So I could be wrong, but I feel like the difference is going to be more likely of the order of, okay, this approach requires 10 policies and this approach requires 5, as opposed to, one approach requires 50 and the other one requires 5. But prove me wrong and maybe I'm not seeing it.
No, but I think, the simplistic 3-tier application, we can show that like, one policy versus 6 policies. But in reality, it's not a single dimension thing, right? When we choose the, pod selector as a single dimension, you're right. Once we start choosing the pod selector as multiple dimensions, this number is going to grow because let's say tier web and, a location Bangalore, you want to have one policy for ingress, and, tier web and location Sunnyvale, you're going to have another policy because of the pod selector you're choosing. But whereas if I take it to the higher level, which is the application, then I'm going to say tier web and Bangalore can communicate to, tier app and, location Bangalore. And same thing, like, I can go at little higher level, have one policy. So that is the, once you start having multiple dimensions, these numbers are going to be totally different. In a realistic environment, I think these numbers are pretty huge, actually, the number of policies.
I'll go back and look at maybe the difference is more than what I was thinking off the top of my head. I know you've got these examples about prod versus dev versus, those different stages and different locations, right?
Yeah. I think, I agree with you. We need to build a stronger case so that, like, we don't have to defend there rather than we defend among ourselves. So which is we go as a unite. If we don't agree, that's okay, but at least 90%.
No, this is just to help you make a stronger case. That's it.
Yeah. No, I'm totally with you, Sanjeev. I think I'm seeking, or actually we are seeking input together, actually. Okay, so that is one. So we talked about multiple policies. So then the other thing is, deny rules. I think already, Abhishek and team put the case forward why we have, we need to have the deny rules. Sanjeev, you also did that. So we are just, we're just taking that, a deny rules also needed. So then the next one, the other one is like, I think, it might go back and forth on the, half communication path. So I think we already talked on that. So then the next one is the policy explosion. So the policy explosion, Sanjeev, for the given example, it might work for using, customize or like, any other templating tools. But the problem is you're going to have that many number of policies in the system, once these templating tools are done. So that means the number of policy explosion is not going to be changed. Only the templating tools will help you to not to write them, but to make it little easy. So that is one point. And the second point, is these templating tools doesn't help you in doing the dynamic things. So dynamic things means, let's say, if I have a location, initially I started with 10 locations, then, I started growing to 15 locations. So with the language we are extending, you don't have to do anything because the language itself takes care of the policy explosion. So we try to, write that and, strike off some of the things which is confusing. I hope that gives you some more clarity for everybody. So Sanjeev and everybody, did you get the point we are trying to make across on this policy explosion?
Yeah, I get the point about the templating helping at the top level, but eventually you're generating more policies.
Exactly. But if you see here, the match is highlighted here. So what we are saying is like, the match deployment and site, you need to match on both sides. And let's say tomorrow deployments grows, site grows, it doesn't matter, that will take care of it. And also this is, in this example, we just gave the AND condition, right? We can even give a regular expression here, site to the match. So basically the match condition will instantiate a different set of dimensions, cross-cutting dimensions on top of the, a regular, endpoint 1 and endpoint 2.
Yeah, and if you see in the Sanjeev, even in the current CNP, I think you and Yang and Abhishek has proposed, right, namespace equal to true to create a condition where both both endpoints belong to the same namespace. So in this, we are extending that idea to any kind of a label, not necessarily only on the namespace. You can do match equal to site. So basically, both endpoints has to be part of the same site or part of the same deployment, like production or testing. So this is a more generic dynamic extension of matching the conditions on both source and destinations.
So for the CMP cap, we also have iterated. So initially we sort of like feel like the namespace could only the namespace would be the boundary for tenants, and that's why we did the match same namespace and different namespaces scheme. But later, I think if you look at the latest cap, we've decided that it can be the case where a single tenant consists of different namespaces. Now you needed something similar to this, whereas you wanted to sort of allow traffic from namespaces that has the same maybe deployment or app tag as you are currently, and that's what we also already support in the CMP proposal as well. So there's not only the match names, same namespace, but also match namespaces that have the same label as yourself now in the cap.
Okay.
Okay, I think
Yeah, I
that's
think-
good input, Yang. I think, I mean, that at least that gives the foundation to this idea, right? So where what we are saying is, match expression. Initially start with the match and labels. You can have a match deployment and not site, or it's really an expression, right? Regular expression.
It's
I mean,
not just matching on labels. It can literally match on almost any field in a definition, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
So,
that's kind of cool.
But I think the deployments and other things kind of like boil down towards labels eventually, right? Because then you're kind of labels are kind of the building blocks for all these higher level constructs. So if you have a deployment which has certain labels which will be applied to all of those pods eventually, I think you can still leverage the labels and what Yang mentioned, like the same label value thing that we are introducing with CMP. I think you should be able to take advantage of that and then have the same use case be solved.
Okay, so here when we say deployment, right, match deployment, see the way I mean, we split the label, right? It has a key and value. So when we say the match in a regular expression, it's the regular expression of the keys. The key is deployment, key is site. You could have a key as a namespace also.
You mean, sorry, do you mean key or do you mean the resource, the kind of the resource? Like, for example, the same label value is today only introduced for namespaces and not for like pod resources. So are you referring to that, or you're referring to the key of a label?
Key of a label.
So that you can do. So when we plan to add the same label value, we plan to have it as a list which accepts the keys whose values should be the same. So you can specify saying that for these resources, for these namespaces, group them based on the label key tenant, and as long as the value for the key tenant is same, they all become part of the same group.
Okay. Yeah. So basically, I don't know whether it is the same, but here, you could have a regular expression itself. You can say deployment and not site, or I mean, it's just a regular expression. Whatever the combination you think is right can be put in there.
So what does a site boil down to? What is a site here? And also, can you clarify when you say deployment, are you talking about the deployment resource, or you're talking about deployment as a label key?
Yeah, here, the label key.
Got it. I think that kind of confused me because I thought you were talking about the deployment resource of Kubernetes, which
Oh,
kind
no,
of
no,
okay.
sorry.
Yeah, me too.
Actually, we should have. I mean,
Yeah, sorry.
yeah, the reason
Maybe you want to clarify that,
yeah, so the reason.
but I think you have probably with the example. But anyway,
Yeah. So because we use the same example and we just use that way. Yeah, we to remove that confusion, we can change some labels in this example.
Cool.
Yeah,
Hey, do you guys,
moreover, just to, I mean, it's not like I'm trying to push this or anything. So, but we work with many customers, and they really like I mean, as it reduces their like a lot of policy explosions. So when I don't want to name the customers, but they have seen like a lot of benefits with this match class.
no, certainly. I think I think your argument is valid in terms of reducing the number of policies. But perhaps you also want to when you next talk to your customer, because the cluster network policy resource does not exist today. If it were to be existing in Kubernetes, and and I think some of the use cases that you also mentioned, kind of like the persona could have been admin, and there is a set of use cases for a persona developer. So if a cluster network policy resource exists for administrators, which kind of like reduces the number of policies that you would need, and with network policy v1, do you think that your number of rules would drastically, or number of policies reduce because of having these two resources? So maybe that's one thing to check. And if the answer is no, then definitely we should also think about what you're proposing in terms of like these higher level intent resources. But did you understand what I was trying to convey?
Yeah, actually,
because the cluster network policy will also reduce the need for redundant rules or policies across all namespaces. So you can have like a single cluster network policy doing a lot of things that they may, or maybe solving a lot of use case, which today requires a lot of policies in individual namespaces. And that is one way to reduce the number of policies. And even after the combination of cluster network policies and V1 network policies, or the ingress egress, not just V1, but maybe V2, but in the form of ingress egress rules, and it still is an overhead in terms of a lot of policies, then maybe we still need to think about evolving it in the fashion that you are proposing.
Yeah, I think see the reason, I mean, when we, with our customers, so we do have a global policy across, across namespaces, even across clusters. That's how, these definitions, are working. But what I have seen is some of our customers, so they define a tenant, and the tenant boundary is the namespace. Under that, like, they have an application or multiple applications. So in that, like, they want everything to be, tenant scoped. They don't want anything in the higher level construct. But there are some customers, what we have seen is like, they wanted to do the other way also, where they wanted to define one policy which will affect all their tenants. So that goes into the CNP, or the higher level global policy. And individual tenant has his own policies, and the top one always gets precedence, and then the tenant policies would go right after that. So I mean, in a way, I have seen, both cases where in a given tenant or namespace, somebody wants to run a application or multiple applications. So
We can talk a little bit more about this tenancy application, but that's a side topic, so we can continue because that kind of goes back into how we are justifying the CNP as well.
Okay.
So I'd be interested in knowing the tenancy model that you've seen in the customers, meaning whether it's admin controlled or developer controlled.
Yeah, I think, I mean, at least most of the cases what I have seen is admin controlled. Even though web service and app service and DB services are, producing their things, but the the firewalling or the security persona, they wanted to have a one particular view. So which is, they have authority to do their configuration.
Yeah, so that's sort of the fundamental assumption of the CNP as well. However, there's also been some feedback about that requiring people to have to communicate out of band to the admin to say, hey, I want to create a new tenant, But anyway, it's a whole discussion on that. We can continue on the main point here. I think bottom line is that my view is that these are all sort of good points, but because these are drastically different from NetPol v1, it will require a stronger justification to pass the SIG network.
Agreed. And I think, if you can, Sanjeev, Abhishek, and Andrew and everybody, if you can help us, I mean, of course, first you have to agree, then help us articulating it, we would take that. And that's why I gave edit permissions to everybody, just please go ahead and modify. You don't have to give comments, you just put, initial at the top and, keep adding it. Then, maybe in that way, we can make, a good progress. So
For sure. I think it's like a ongoing piece of work, but I think thanks for starting it. I did want to just mention that we're almost out of time, but this policy support for multi-interface pods, I put in the agenda, but there's actually already something like that implemented. So it might be good to take a look and kind of confer with them by the Network Plumbing Working Group, which they reached out, and I went to one of their meetings last week. So just give that a look too if you're interested. I haven't given it a deep look yet, but
Andrew, just quickly, are they basically taking the current NetPol v1 and applying it to multiple interfaces, or is it more drastic than that?
No, it's just that. That's all it is. There's just an annotation. You apply a special annotation that tells the network policy controller what interface to do it on, basically.
Okay. It'll be interesting to see how things like the selectors, like if you're matching on.
Sorry, go ahead, Sanjeev.
That's fine. We should look at that proposal.
Yeah.
And the writer of that is actually based out of China, so it's hard for him to come to this meeting. It's like a horrible time, or else I'm sure he would come and talk about it more. But as I get more info on it, I'll refer it to the group.
Got it. So I think, so Andrew and everybody, if you can start editing and, giving your context there and input there, then, maybe in the next meeting, we can review together and, start forming up before we go to bigger audience, Yeah, that's a request.
Cool. Yeah, sounds good. We'll keep it ready. Okie doke. Well, we're right out at the top of the hour, so we'll go ahead and wrap up. Unless anyone has any last things. Going once, going twice. Oh, awesome. Well, I hope everyone has a good. Yeah, Abhishek.
Would you reach out to the folks at Red Hat to see if Friday morning works for them, or morning PST? So I don't know which time zone they are in, but
so around noon, around lunchtime on Friday for us, right? For EST.
Anytime between 10 and 11, I guess, if we start and then maybe make an hour out of it. So either 10 to 11, 10:30 to 11, or 11 to 12.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I'll
Um,
reach out to them right now and ask.
Cool. All right. And I think Casey mentioned that he can find someone from Calico to attend in case we decide to proceed this week.
Okay, sounds good.
Cheers.
Cool. Cheers, everyone. Talk to you later. Thank
Thank
you.
you guys. Bye.
Bye.